Hello, y'all on YouTube. This is Rob with Rob's Nerdy Knives. Today I have a very interesting Rob's Ramblings. I want to talk to you a little bit about knife safety and knife registration. You know, it's a very serious and concerning thing that's going on. People are very, very concerned about knives and you know, the risk that they are, you know, even though they're tools that you think they're for everyday use. I know that there's a big push to possibly register, like, you know, kitchen knives. And I think that's something that's we want to talk about, this push for registration of kitchen knives, so that, you know, you have to be licensed, you got to be at least 30 years old to be able to buy, use, or touch a kitchen knife, and you've got to be trained, and you need at least, what I think they're talking about, 120 hours of training and the certification in kitchen knife handling and safety. They also want to talk about, you know, making sure that you have the special tools, special steel, mesh gloves for this, and also be able to have a special, like a chain mill kind of armor, you know, kind of a covering for your chest in case that knife should happen to jump up by itself, because these knives have been known to move all by themselves, and you got to be careful because these are tools that just move, you know. Like, for instance, right there, you see that right there? It moved. It moved. You see that? It's moving all by itself, right there, all by itself. And that's why it's really important that we register. We register every kitchen knife and get them out of the homes, especially chefs. Chefs are the worst, you know, really. We really got to get those guys under control. I mean, they wield them so quickly, and they're chopping and slicing and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Who can trust them? Really, who can trust a chef anymore with those knives? And then they sharpen them right there on the spot, making them even more dangerous. It's crazy. It's insane. We got to get those chefs and cooks and people just registered, right? It's just a real concern for me, and it really brings a lot of anxiety for me. And you know, being a person who talks about knives as tools, this is something I think we all need to have a really serious discussion about. And if you're following this far, you know that this is a joke, and this is a parody. And I'm making fun of this because knives are tools. That's what they are. Knives are tools to be used to do certain things. Kitchen knives, in this case, are used to cut meat, to cut vegetables, to cut bread, whatever. I didn't put a bread knife here that's serrated, but, you know, you can cut bread even with a very slicey kind of knife. All these knives here are kitchen knives, and they've been well used, as you can see, with the scratching and the handling and being dropped and resharpened and what have you. These are just tools. You use these tools in the kitchen. I cut tomatoes, oranges, lemons, you know, squash, zucchini, lettuce, whatever else you can imagine. That's what this is. It's just a tool to cut vegetables, a tool to cut, you know, and slice onions maybe. You know, you can mince it or something like that as you're doing. You're just chopping, right? That's all you're doing right there. It's just a tool. That's what these guys are, just tools. And so many times in our community, we get people who come up and they just look at our knives and they freak out. And they go, oh my gosh, those are so dangerous. As they're using these giant butcher knives and chopping things, they come up and they go, that knife is so dangerous. And I go, yeah, especially when you compare the two, right? Let's take a look and compare these two knives right here. They are incredibly dangerous. This one is just so much more ferocious looking than this one, right? Sadly, the statistic in knife tragedy that occurs, and we won't go into details because I don't want YouTube to like flag this video or anything like that, and I want to respect their algorithm and their policies, but the thing is, the most dangerous weapon out there is going to be a kitchen knife. It's where more things have occurred than anything else. And the likelihood of this is like 0.5% out of all knives, where this is like 99%, right? So the reality is, if you want to talk about dangerous, it's the person who uses them. You know, I jokingly said, look, it moved by itself. Well, it didn't move by itself. Someone has to pick it up, choose to do something. Now, a lot of times kitchen knives are weapons of opportunity because it happens to be there. And ironically, people who carry knives all the time realize what it is. It's a tool, and it's a tool that can be used for good. It can also be dangerous if it's used improperly, but most people who carry knives know what it is, know what you should use it for and what you shouldn't, right? So therefore, knives really, by the knife community, we are people who understand knives, who respect it as a tool, who use it as a tool. Many of us use it in our work, use it in our jobs. If we're into construction, carpentry, electrical work, people use their knives all the time. Even in my office, I use a lot of these to open envelopes, letters. I use these to open boxes, all sorts of things. So for me, this particular knife right here, sorry, I'm having a hard time flipping this one for some reason, is a tool. I use it so much around the house. I open cases of water bottles. I open, what do you call it? Fertilizer. I open dirt. Matter of fact, I did that recently. Phil put a bunch of dirt out. Mulch. I did that just about a week ago. I did the mulch for my wife's birthday. There's a whole bunch of mulch that I put out around the yard. And I used a knife to cut the bag open. And that's what it was. It was a tool. Matter of fact, even when I wielded it, I had gloves on. And I wanted to make sure I had a knife that I could safely use with gloves. So I had a heavy duty kind of knife, right? This would be not a great one with gloves because it's kind of hard to wield, but this is great for the office. It's a nice gentleman carry, opens letters and boxes very, very nicely, right? You know, and I wouldn't use a kitchen knife because I'm going to be touching food. I'm going to be touching things. I don't want to have tape and sticky stuff, and I don't know where the box has been. This is for food, and I don't want whatever was in the box on my food as I'm eating it. And so this knife stays in the kitchen, stays in a butcher block. It's a tool. That's what it is. It's just a tool, right? And if you use the tool, it's going to get beat up and banged up. Matter of fact, probably the most beat up, banged up knives in our house are our kitchen knives. And that's just one of those things that it blows me away sometimes when people legitimately get this weird thought about knives, because for them, this is so scary to see, but yet they can go in the kitchen and grab a giant butcher knife and chop away and not think that's scary at all. And sometimes not even look and cut their finger and think, oh, it's just a little accident, not a big deal because I'm in the kitchen. That's crazy. You know, it really is. It's not respectful for what the tool is. It's almost as crazy as saying, you know, you need to be registered to lift rocks, right? I mean, rocks can be very dangerous, probably more dangerous than most things, right? You know, you have to have a license to pick up sticks, right? You know, you have to be licensed to carry a baseball bat. You know, and it's a sport. For that, it's a tool to hit a ball in baseball. But can it be used badly? Sure, almost everything can be used badly. There's no question about that. And that to me is one of my ramblings. It's just, it bugs me, if you will. And I'm trying to be respectful, but sometimes people aren't looking at this rationally, right? You got to look at it as a tool. I mean, it leads into certain knife laws that come in certain states and certain countries. I respect every one of those knife laws, right? I want you to adhere to them, follow the law, do the legal thing. Don't do anything illegal, right? Texas is great because Texas, our knife laws are reasonable, and I think they're rational. I mean, we have a law that if you're under 18, you can only carry a 5-inch knife or a 5.5-inch knife. That's the longest it can be. Any kind of knife that's under 5.5 inches. But once you're over 18, you can carry any knife, any size, right? And that's perfectly legal. Now, someone under 18 could carry something longer than 5.5 inches if they're going fishing, if they're going hunting, because there's a purpose for that. Or if you're with a parent, then it's completely legal. And that makes sense to me because, you know, it's a tool. It's a tool if you're going hunting, you're going fishing. I carry my pocket knife with me all the time. When I go to parties, people are like, hey, Robert, can you open this? You have a pocket knife. I do. And most guys will have, in Texas, have pocket knives. It's almost unusual not to have a pocket knife. My wife has 2 pocket knives in her purse. Two. You know, I have a pocket knives in our cars in case you need something. Let's say you run over some cord or something that was left in the middle of the street. You got to cut it off from your tire. You need a tool. You need a tool to do that. And usually the car knife is going to be a serrated knife because it needs to be sort of a saw just in case I need to do some work, get through something, right? That's important. So, I mean, even in my car, I'll even carry a Leatherman. I have like one of these right here. And the nice thing about a Leatherman, obviously it has all sorts of other tools on here. And let's see, this one has a knife. Do I have? Yeah, I do. So on this one, let me get it out. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to get this out here and show you. It's a little hard to get to. Let me pull this up first. There we go. It has a saw. And so if I needed, if there was wood or something that was in the way I needed to cut that got into the car, I could saw that. Again, it's a tool, right? This is a tool that I have in my car, but it has a knife on it. But, you know, to us, it just makes perfect sense. If you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, you would need a knife. You'd want a good knife. You'd want a sharp knife. I mean, could you imagine cutting tomatoes with like this part of a knife right here? Trying to cut a tomato, all you can do is squish it. You're gonna make pasta sauce. You're gonna make ketchup. You're not gonna ever be able to slice the tomato and put it on a nice, you know, BLT, bacon, lettuce, tomato kind of sandwich. You're not gonna be able to slice it for a sandwich. You're not gonna be able to slice it for anything, right? It's a tool. And that's what knives are. And for us in the knife community, we respect these tools. We realize the tools have purpose and we respect them for what they are. Most of us, this is something that we live with every day. We grew up as children being given knives when we were young, or acquiring our own knives when we were young, learning how to sharpen them, how to take care of them, understanding that a sharp knife is a safer knife. A dull knife is usually the most dangerous knife you can own. If a knife is dull and you attempt to cut something, that's when you attempt to do stupid things to try to cut through something when it's not cutting. You're not as respectful. You think it's not as sharp, and then you cut yourself or do something dumb, right? Statistically, a sharper knife is always safer. Now, for some people, it can be scary, right? But that's also true, with anything. You just have to understand how to use it. So I'm kind of passionate about this one. And I don't know if you guys agree or disagree. I'd love to hear your comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But I think it's a legitimate topic to talk about. Knife safety and what knives are and how people react to it. I did a little kind of a parody one on knives, and it was kind of more of a humor one where we talked about knives but this is more talking about in general, because there are some states you're not allowed to carry more than a 3-inch knife, right? This would be legal. Now, because in some states I can flip it, it might not be legal in some cities, or I think New York or something like that. If you can open this and anyway, I think it's considered illegal. Now, if you go to England, you can't have a flipper that frame locks. It has to be a slip joint. That's their law. Yet, some of the most dangerous things that have occurred on their subways and their trains and stuff like that is knives. And guess what? It's not a pocket knife. Yeah, it's this. Again, it's because people will find a tool, if you will, for their case, a tool for evil, a tool for harm, which is terrible, which I'm absolutely opposed to. I'm opposed to anybody doing harm, evil, anything illegal like that. I stand against it. I say that's wrong. We as good people need to protect those who need to be protected, and we need to do what's right. That's why I'm very strong in having the right to be able to defend and protect those people you love and care about. But you have those laws. I think a couple of my subscribers are from Canada, and they're talking about some of their laws, which are very unreasonable, very ridiculous many times. Just getting a simple pocket knife. And a lot of those guys, they're out in the woods. They go hunting, they go moose hunting, and whatever. They go, it's a very there's a lot of outdoor stuff up there. A lot of them do things like that. And to me, it's like you're taking away a tool that they might need. When you go fishing, how are you going to be able to fillet a fish if you don't have a fillet knife? Now, they're more flexible and bend, thinner and longer, but how are you going to be able to cut the fish? Then you think about carpenters, they have saws and hammers and stuff. I mean, a hammer it's a tool, but a hammer could be used for evil and for harm. Absolutely, it can be. That's something that could be used terribly. A drill, horrible, right? Could be used for something terrible. A nail gun, by definition, a nail gun is just a tool to put in nails more efficiently, especially if you're roofing or putting up fences and things like that. But it could be used wrongly and hurt someone. Again, what is the intent of the tool, right? And how are people careful in how they handle that tool? And you'll always hear me talking about how to handle a knife safely. It's the reason why I'm not a big fan of slip joints. Slip joints can slip out, can cut yourself. There's things, what I do and how I handle a knife, I'm not comfortable with a slip joint. Now, people who grew up with slip joints may love them because that's the only way they use a knife. They would never think of a frame lock knife like this you lock and you can do harder work with. For that, they may only use a fixed blade. And so for them, there's a slip joint and a fixed blade, and there's no in between. I think a frame lock, a liner lock, compression lock, a shark lock, tri-lock, all the different things that are out there, types of locks, are a means in between where you can kind of sort of have the best of a slip joint and a fixed blade put together. Now, would I go out and chop wood with one of these? No, obviously not. If you're gonna cut logs with a knife, I think you need a hard steel that can take a lot of abuse, needs to be a fixed blade. That's the safest tool for that job. If you're out and you're bushwhacking, you need to get a good fixed blade where you can cut logs if you need to do that, right? I wouldn't recommend it. Now, if you're in a situation where this is all you have, I want this to be the best what I have if I'm stuck out there, right? I want the best tool for the job at the time. I love this knife, but for the longest time, this knife couldn't cut worth means. So I finally reprofiled the edge. Now it's a nice, very sharp edge. I can shave my arm, crazy sharp, which is great. because I can use this again. I can use it to cut boxes. I can use it to cut cardboard, letters open. I can do all sorts of things that I like to do with it. When I wasn't using it, I was cutting an envelope, and I can tell you, sometimes when you're cutting an envelope, if the knife is not sharp, it pulls and rips things, and it can slip and do all sorts. But if it cuts nicely, it just moves right through like butter, and it does its job, and it's safer. So, no, I don't want to register knives. And I joke about that, but you've got countries like New Zealand, I believe, that is talking about that or has already enacted some things over there. Now, that's their country. They make those laws. You have to live by it. But I think some of those things are not reasonable for tools, right? You can't always regulate people's hearts. You can help them to understand what's right and what's wrong. I mean, you go back when I was in high school, and I'm just going to date myself here, but back in high school, kids carried pocket knives to school. It wasn't a big deal, because a lot of the kids worked on farms or did other things. You just had a pocket knife. A lot of the kids would carry their hunting rifles, their 22s or whatever they went to go hunting or killing bird or dove or whatever, or shotguns. They would carry them in the back of their truck on a rack going to school. We had gun classes in school. I mean, that's how radically different it is from back then to today. But there was a lot of knife safety, there was a lot of gun safety, there was a lot of safety classes. People grew up with it, understanding what these were. Every kid got a BB gun at some point when they got old enough, and you'd go shoot cans and stuff and stuff like that. That was just something that everyone did, and it was natural, normal kind of thing, right? Everyone respected it. Everyone understood what you did and what you didn't do with it. Because if you did something wrong with it, boy, you got in trouble from your parents and everybody around. So everybody was a part of that. And they, neighbors would let your parents know what you did that you shouldn't have done. Absolutely. But again, there's that community sense of this is a tool. We all understand what it is. We understand what it's for. We understand how you use it. Just like with pocket knives. If you see someone doing something dumb with a pocket knife, it wasn't allowed. But a lot of times you get people who try to put these laws in place because there's this one person or group of people who do something wrong. And as much as I know it's meant to protect, it's meant for good intentions. And I respect that. I do. I see the heart there. But you have to look at the core, what caused all of that, right? How can we change that? One of the things about knives and knife safety, and what I love about this channel is I like to talk about knives and how they're a tool. I had one guy who, when I pulled out my switchblade, which I have an OTF that's out the front automatic, I also have OTS, which is out the side automatics, and they're like just freaked out that a knife could be automatic, right? They would be like, that is so dangerous. I can't believe no one needs that. Actually, in certain states, if you lose a hand and you only have one hand, it's absolutely legal for you to have OTF or OTSs, because that's the only way you could open and close one realistically. It is actually allowable because they understand that that's a tool that helps them. Likewise, I can tell you my automatics are very convenient when I need to open a knife and do a task. Now, these are usable, user-friendly, user knives that I have. Now, some people collect to collect, and that's totally cool. Collect away. Some people collect because they're enthusiasts. They use, they collect them. Do that. Absolutely. I respect that. That is your call, your decision, your money, your knives. I collect everything I have, I use, okay? I only have one Safe Queen. It's my dad's knife he bought before World War II. You all know that. It's over almost 100 years old, so it's a very precious knife. My sons all would love to get it someday, but that's my Safe Queen. But otherwise, all my knives are users. It doesn't mean I go out and abuse and beat them up, okay? I don't want to go out and break the tip and cut logs with them, but I use them. Like, I make open boxes and letters and envelopes, but that's use. That's the intent for that knife. This is more of a gentleman carry. I carried this to my son's wedding. It was to open boxes. Actually, we used it to open gifts for him, right? So needed a knife, here you go, open your gifts, right? So I handed him a knife, And also, we know about knife safety. When you grow up, for instance, like, you never hand someone a knife, like, you don't hand them with the blade first. That's absolutely discourteous. If you hand someone an open knife, you always hand them with the handle, with the knife up away from their hand, right? And if you give someone an open knife, they should always give you back an open knife, right? They shouldn't try to close it. If you hand someone a closed knife, they should hand it back to you as a closed knife, unless they don't know how to close it and they say, I don't know how to close it. Then obviously they would hand it back to you like this, with the blade up away from your hand. You never hand. Those are common sense, but they're things you learn as a child, your parents, your father, your mother, whatever, teaches you. And so those are things you grew up with. And if you didn't know that, those are knife courtesies, right? You don't do that, right? You don't ever hand someone a knife like that. You don't walk around with your knife up in the air. You know, if you're walking with a knife, you should close it if you don't need it for what you're doing. You don't walk around with just an open knife like walking around with your knife, you're swinging it away. You should close your knife, right? If you had a fixed blade, you put it in the sheath to carry. You don't walk around with it unless you're working on a task, doing something, but then it's out because you're ready to use it for something, right? Those are common courtesies and manners with knives that people know. And if you know those, people feel safe around you. You know, some people get freaked out by the size of the blade. They look at that and they go, oh, that's fine. That's not scary at all. But then you pull out another knife and the blade is much bigger, and that's like, oh, they start to freak out and they panic because of the size of the blade. And all it is it may just be you needed a bigger knife for a bigger task, right? Or you just like a more full presentation of a hand. You know, it's a stronger knife or whatever you need, and this is you have bigger hands, whatever, right? And this knife could look very small in someone with gigantic hands, whereas this knife looks really small in my hand, but you put this in my wife's hand, this knife will probably look a little bit like this in my hand, right? It won't look super scary, but you put that in someone's small hand, it can look gigantic. So again, these are tools. These are tools. And I am not an advocate of stringent knife laws. Now, I respect the fact that, you know, you can't bring knives into court. You can't bring them through airports. I get that. And that, you know, I respect that. You know, that's the law. We do. And when you travel, if you check in your luggage, you can put your knives into your suitcases that you check in that you don't have with you on board. And that's perfectly fine. I respect all of that. And I'm okay with that because that's the law. And that's meant for protection because, you know, you have to have sort of a common standard for in-flight, and, you know, you have people who mean ill will. And yeah, you know, do I wish that there were people who made good decisions, there were more marshals, there were more people who could protect others? Yeah, absolutely, but that doesn't always happen. And we're in a society where people are more willing to take a picture with a camera than to help someone, right? They're more willing to film what's going on than actually intervene. And that's kind of sad. That's more of a commentary on our society, right? We're not there to protect and help and defend people. We're more willing to look at the train wreck that's happening in front of us and just watch it. But, you know, I don't know. That's another whole commentary that's nothing to do with knives, but I'm not even going to talk about that. But getting back to my Rob's rambling, knives should not be registered. Knives are tools. That's all they are. And every tool can be used for good, and every tool can be used for something not good. And it depends on the person and their intent, right? But we always have to take the fact that the intent of the tool, a kitchen knife, is to help you cook, help you make food, prep food, all sorts of stuff, cut food, eat food. This is what it is. It's a great tool, you know? You're cutting vegetables, excuse me, with a paring knife. It's a great tool. If it's a steak knife, you're cutting your meat, your vegetable, whatever you're cutting it and eating your food. That's what it is. It's a tool, right? And so to me, that's a great tool to have. I don't want to take this away, but I think it's a great tool. Just like a pocket knife, they're meant to be tools for whatever you have. I like to have a pocket knife on me. I use a pocket knife every day, multiple times throughout the day. There's not a day where I can't remember a day where I have not used a pocket knife for something, cut something. I mean, even in the mornings when I'm making coffee, if I have a container and the plastic's on there and I can't pull it right and it's really tight, I get my pocket knife, I cut that and lead it, and then it opens up just nicely. Sometimes, you know, there's cases of water you can't just rip open. The plastic's really thick or something. Or sometimes you need to open a box. You need to break down a box. There's a string that you need to cut off. What have you? You know, there's packaging, whatever. It's a great tool. My wife, when it was her birthday, she used her pocket knife quite a bit when we were setting up for the birthday party. She had her little Spyderco, a little ladybug out, and she was cutting things left and right and using her knife as a tool. And she loves to have it. Every once in a while she says, hey, my knife's not sharp, I need you to sharpen it. Because I kind of sharpen all the knives in the house, right? Because I like sharpening, and so they know I like doing it, and they just ask me to sharpen stuff, and for me that's fun. I don't mind it, you know, for family. I'll do it for family. You know, it's not a business, so I'm not like Neves Knives, who has a really professional sharpening business. I'm not a professional sharpener. I do a very good job, I think. But I don't know if I could do it as a business and do as many knives as quickly as I would like. And I wouldn't want the risk, because some of those knives are super expensive and you really have to tape them off, maybe take them apart to sharpen those blades.
I just don't want to get into all of that. But I like sharpening my knives, right? And I understand what that means. And I like taking the time when I do that. And I don't like to be rushed when I do that. So for me, a nice sharp knife for everybody is a good tool. And it shouldn't have to be regulated. It really shouldn't. I know if you go across the border to Canada, if you have a pair of tweezers with a little blade on there or a looking blade, they're going to confiscate it. If you have a pocket knife, if you have a Swiss Army knife, if you, God forbid, you brought pepper spray because you just, women are always given pepper spray in dangerous situations, that's considered super illegal, and fine, that's their law, respect it. Don't bring that stuff with you or be willing to surrender it and give it up. If you go there, just understand that's the rule. Just like if you go to certain states, you go to certain cities, Chicago, New York has some really goofy regulations. California, you can't have more than a 2-inch automatic, right? It has to be under 2 inches, 2 inches or less. And you just know, that's why they make a lot of automatics that are less than 2 inches, right? To follow those laws. So they respect that, but still, a 2-inch blade and a 3-inch blade, if someone had ill intent, could still do something that's not good, right? They could still do horrible things, whether it was 2 inches, 3 inches, or 4 inches. I'm just saying, it's a tool, and it depends on the person's intent. So it's a long rambling. If you listen this far, I appreciate it. You might have gotten some thoughts out of it. You might have had some, you might have already comment down below, which I love, by the way. I try to read all the comments and reply to them all. So please feel free to comment down below. I'd love to talk to you about this stuff. Sometimes it spurs on other great ideas for Rob's Ramblings. And I haven't done a Rob's Rambling in a while. I was trying to think of some things, and I've been real busy trying to catch up with work and catch up on reviews, but I thought this was a really good one. I was talking to, I think, one of my subscribers about this, but I just thought, let's register kitchen knives as a parody because as funny as that sounds and as ridiculous as that sounds, there's going to be people out there who absolutely will agree with that. I have no doubt. You look at some states and some regulations, people want to regulate everything. Have so much regulation that you can regulate to regulate, probably a regulation on the size of everything. And that to me is ridiculous, right? The point of government is to protect the people, keep them safe. And, so if someone's out there making knives and saying this is a certain steel and the steel breaks all the time and people get cut or they can't rely on it and it's dangerous and they're trying to do a job that's life or death, for instance, let's say you're climbing up on a really high, pole and you're replacing something doing electrical work and you have a knife and it's supposed to be a certain standard of steel and you cut and your blade breaks and the blade falls down and stabs someone in below or breaks and you can't do your job and you're in a dangerous situation where now you don't have the tool to work. That to me is a regulation. You want to have kind of a standard uniform. If you say this is a certain type of steel, it should be a certain type of steel. I'm cool with that, right? There should be a standard out there. There should be a standard that we all adhere to. Now, within the knife industry, we would probably say, if you're going to call this steel, we're all going to check up on you and say, well, okay, let's see if it really is that type of steel or not, right? So that's kind of the thing that we talk about. But anyways, what are your thoughts on there? I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear your ideas, your insights into this. What do you think? Am I being totally ridiculous? But, as ridiculous as it is, sometimes these things do come up. So love to hear your thoughts. Hey, if you thought this video was interesting, fun, entertaining, or just, maybe weird, but you enjoyed it, and you watched this far, hey, consider hitting the like button down below. And if you've already hit that like button, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Subscribing and liking my videos really helps out the channel a lot. It helps me to produce more content, do more things, and I really appreciate it. And if you've already subscribed, maybe consider hitting the notification button so you can be notified of future content when it's dropped. If you've done all of that, check me out over on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Again, that's on Instagram at robs_nerdy_knives. Hey, thanks so much for watching today. Have a great day and a great week. Bye.